We are now ready for the 2020 Stanley Cup Finals between the Western Conference champion Dallas Stars and Eastern Conference champion Tampa Bay Lightning. Today we're going to preview the series and I'll give you my predictions on who will win the Stanley Cup. And that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now it's hard to believe that we're already ready here for the Stanley Cup Final between the Stars and the Lightning. I can't believe it feels like it wasn't that long ago that the return to play first got underway in August, and we've already gone through all this time here. The NHL's really done a good job with the kind of chugging along here, getting through these games as quickly as possible, and we're now down to the final two teams here in the Edmonton bubble who's going to do battle for the Stanley Cup. Now, in the case of Tampa Bay, of course, they're really not that much of a surprise. I know I kind of went against them in my early predictions for these playoffs because they kind of disappointed me over the last 2 or 3 years. I've been picking them to win the Stanley Cup or at least the Eastern Conference for the last few years, and I had said, you know what, I'm going to stop picking them because maybe I'm cursing them or something, but if I don't pick them, it'll be the year they win, and well, here we are. So Tampa fans, you're welcome. When it comes to the Dallas Stars, I will say they are a bit of a surprise. They're a team I didn't have a ton of confidence in coming into the playoffs. They have surprised with their offensive abilities because they've been a pretty low-scoring team for the most part, but they found their ways. They got some great goaltending, some unexpected heroes, and here we are for the finals. So now we're going to compare each team. We're going to take a look at their playoff stats, kind of break down the pros and cons here for each side, and see who we think is going to win. So here's a quick recap of all the statistics for the Lightning throughout these playoffs. Now, they've played so far 19 games in these return to play during the playoffs. They have a 14-5 record, which gives them a .737 winning percentage. They've scored 59 goals, or an average of 3.11, while allowing 42 goals for an average of 2.21. So overall, that's a pretty good differential. I mean, they're plus 17 when it comes to goal scoring, obviously, which is something you would expect a team to be in the finals to have a pretty good differential there. They did run into some tough opponents in the Eastern Conference during the playoffs, but they managed to get their way through. They battled some different teams along the way, with just defeating the New York Islanders here. And I think the fact that the Dallas Stars are normally kind of looked upon as being more defensive in that regard, they actually plowed through some teams like Columbus and the Islanders, so they're used to that type of opponent. And Tampa, I think, will be well positioned for this matchup. Now let's take a look at special teams here. On the power play so far for the Lightning in these playoffs have been a little bit disappointing. They have a record of 17.9% conversion rate, which really isn't great. They've had some prime opportunities, and they haven't come through. Now there's been times that the Lightning did come through on the power play, such as the game-winning goal to finish off the New York Islanders. But there were plenty of other opportunities between Game 5 in that series, and even earlier in that game, in Game 6, when their power play let them down, and I thought might actually cause them to blow it and lose the series, or at least allow the Islanders to come all the way back and force a Game 7. So the power play needs to find a way to be better. The PK has been pretty decent, though, so far. They do have an 83.6% success rate, so obviously they're not allowing a whole lot on the power play, which is pretty solid. Now, obviously, if you take a look here at the top scorers for the Tampa Bay Lightning, they get some great performances, but the usual suspects, nothing that's overly shocking. Nikita Kucherov so far has led the way with 26 points. Braden Point's right there at 25. Now, keep in mind, Point has had to miss a couple of games. He has been banged up a bit, and I think if he wouldn't have had to, he'd likely be ahead of Kucherov a little bit. I think overall Point has been probably one of the most dominant players in the entire playoffs, and I think it's been the more consistent, most dangerous player for Tampa. And I think if Tampa wins the Cup, he right now at least would probably be my pick for the Conn Smythe Trophy. I mean, you've also got some pretty good scoring efforts from guys like Victor Hedman, who's on his way to setting records for goals for a defenseman in the playoffs. You got 9 goals already and 15 points. Absolutely dominant force back there. You got Andre Palat with 13 points and Yanni Gourde with 12. So overall, that's pretty solid. I mean, they're getting lots of offense, and at least it's getting reasonably spread out. But obviously the Stars, though, as you can see, are going to have a little bit more offense from the back end, which could come into a factor here. Now let's take a look at some of the key metrics for the Dallas Stars, and then we're going to compare both of these starting goaltenders against each other to see who has an edge in that regard. Dallas Stars so far in these Stanley Cup playoffs have played 21 games. They have a record of 13 wins and 8 losses, so obviously they've had some of their series go a little bit deeper, and they played a few extra games here. They've allowed 62 goals while allowing 64, so they do have a negative goal differential. Now the Dallas Stars earlier on especially were not scoring as in bunches. They have found their way though, and obviously it did have their moments when they've had some explosive games with the offense, but it hasn't been consistent throughout, which is why they're on a negative side of things there. But they've been way more offensive than I expected and that many people expected in these playoffs. Taking a look here as well at their special teams, their power play has been really, really good. 27.3 success rate, which is extremely solid. And their penalty kill has been really good as well at 83.3. So looking back at Tampa, the Dallas Stars definitely have an edge on the power play. The penalty killing is pretty much comparable. And like I said, if you look at overall team defense goals against, Tampa has that advantage. So as we can see here, the Stars have technically scored more goals, but they've also played more games. So Tampa does have the better average of goals per game here, while also allowing fewer goals. So theoretically, on paper here, you'd have to give an advantage to Tampa when it comes to offense and defense right now overall as a team. Now let's take a look at the Stars' top scorers. You've got Miro Heiskanen, the young defenseman, leading the way, certainly a contender for the Conn Smythe. And if Dallas were to win the Stanley Cup, he would definitely be my pick for the award. He's leading with 22 points. You got Jamie Benn, though. He's right there at 18. Has been really kind of sneaky good is the way to describe him. Jamie Benn, if he had a really solid final and they were to win, he could be a consideration for the Conn Smythe as well. You've also got Denis Gurianov with 9 goals and 17 points. But don't forget, as much as he's been impressive, Gurianov did have one game where he had a big explosion there. So as much as he's been good, I just want to make sure that's known that a lot of that did come in one game. But he has been, certainly a key part of their success, and obviously scored a huge goal against Vegas to propel them into the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, after you got Gurianov, you get Klingberg at 16. So, again, like I said, between he and Heiskanen, certainly more offense coming from the back end than Tampa. But Tampa overall, you might be able to argue, is the more solid, well-rounded decor. You've also got Joe Pavelski and Alexander Radulov with 14 points apiece. Now, let's take a look at goaltending. We're going to compare Andrei Vasilevskiy against Anton Khudobin head-to-head here. We're going to put the stats for each guy up here on one slide here on the screen and see who we can figure out who has the advantage. Here you get Andrei Vasilevskiy so far in these playoffs, has a goals against average of 1.82. That's pretty stingy. He has 14 games that he's won so far, and he has a save percentage of .931, whereas Anton Khudobin right now has won 12 games, whereas he has a goals against average of 2.62 and a save percentage of .920. So technically, Andrei Vasilevskiy has him beat in both key metrics there for the goaltenders. Now, at times I think Khudobin has had to be better because of just the way the overall teams have played. He's certainly been an interesting story at 34 years old, a guy who's never been a regular starter in the NHL, except for briefly in Dallas when Bishop's been injured for longer stretches, but never really been appointed, the 1A goalie. It's absolutely remarkable. The workload he's had to carry has been phenomenal, but he's got the job done. So theoretically here, in my opinion, on paper, Tampa kind of should beat Dallas in every aspect of the game, but Dallas will put up a good fight. I do see this series being, somewhat close and somewhat long. I can see there being some overtime games. I think it's going to go, I'm going to predict probably 6 games. And even though I said earlier that I had to stop picking Tampa so that they would win because I felt like I was cursing them or something because they had so many playoff letdowns when I was predicting them to win, I think I'm done with that superstition for right now. Just like we saw Dallas touch the trophy and say the heck with that superstition, I'm going to go back to Tampa. I just don't see here how they can lose. But at the same time, this Dallas Stars team has been surprising us all playoffs. And I won't be completely shocked if they actually pull it off here. I mean, they do have great goaltending. And even though on paper, theoretically, like I said, Tampa should be better. And I think they have the better group of forwards. They're deeper. They have, defensively on the decor, they have a more balanced back there, a lot more experience too, especially when it comes to playoffs. They do have an edge in goaltending based on the stats between Vasilevskiy and Khudobin. So it should be Tampa that wins this Stanley Cup. But at the same time, Dallas has been proving everybody wrong the entire return to play. So we will see what happens. But Tampa will be my pick, and I'm going to say it happens in 6 games. So let me know your predictions down below. Who do you think is going to win the Stanley Cup? How many games do you think it's going to take? And who do you think is going to win the Conn Smythe Trophy? For the Conn Smythe right now, I'm going to say Braden Point. But I'll tell you, if I do have any concerns about Tampa and Dallas actually beating them, it's the fact that the Lightning have been banged up. We've had Point be out for a little bit of time. We've had Kucherov be banged up and be out for a bit of time. So, the fact that they're not getting much of a break after beating the Islanders, where the Stars have had some extra time off to kind of heal up, that to me is my really only concern. If Tampa has no time to recover from injuries here, and if guys like Point and Kucherov, they're already without Stamkos, have to miss time, that could be a big blow. We saw what the Islanders were able to do, and even just with Braden Point being out of the lineup, of course Stamkos hasn't played yet, so even if he does get back in, I'm not sure how effective he's going to be. He's probably going to be watching his minutes closely, so we'll see. But that's my big concern for Tampa is their health. But theoretically, they should win the 2020 Stanley Cup. So let me know your thoughts down below, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.